Alrighty, give me just a minute. I gotta get things situated. Let's see. And there we go. I think we're good. Let's see. Nope, that thing's like freaking out. We're gonna go to the minimum screen. There. That should be fine. Why are you getting like 40 frames a second? There you go. It must have just been left over from the other screen. I need to fix that other screen. That it's got like too many elements or something, and the marquee elements are glitching out, and I don't know what the deal is, but I suspect that's part of why it absolutely tanks the frame rate. I have returned. I'm alive. I'm here. From my week-ish, my week-long excursion to the other side of the country. To the... I always want to talk shit, because if you've never been to San Francisco, it is such a busy city. It's got its problems, but it's just in general such a busy city. But at the very least, the weather's usually like fine. Like, you know, here in North Carolina, like I'm not as far south as someone in like Florida, where they're gonna get, you know, they're living in Satan's ass crack. But we're definitely in like the armpit. Like, our weather's probably almost as schizophrenic and gets stupidly hot for no reason. So, but at least out there, like, I mean, everybody that lives there is like wrapped up in thick jackets, and then I was walking around in like a t-shirt and honestly would have been shorts for most of it, but a lot of what I was doing was like in a professional setting, so I didn't really feel like shorts were appropriate. So I had shorts for like my days off mainly. But now on the other side of the coin, if you go to like Los Angeles, because that's, I've never really spent any like time in there, but I have had to I forget what it was a weird reason I had to like connect through there one time. I think I got like diverted, and that is at least the airport way worse. Way worse. Honestly, our airport is way worse than the one in San Francisco. I actually quite like the San Francisco airport. I don't know about anybody that lives there, how they feel about it, but I actually quite like the airport. So it's like, it feels well organized. I mean, at least as someone who's traveling through it. I wouldn't want to drive into it. God, no. But the inside of the airport seems fine. But from what little I know of Los Angeles, by comparison, which is, of course, it's further south, so you expect it to be warmer. That's almost like a 7-Eleven with dodgy air conditioning multiplied into a city. So but we had pretty good weather, and that was at least a positive. It only rained part of it, and it was not really foggy at all, which was nice because we had someone new with us who had never been on any of these trips, and so we did on some of the days off and in the evening we did a little bit of like sightseeing for them. So and from that perspective, it's good to have the good weather as well. So before, like, the next thing we kind of need to get into is inventory. But I think we got a couple things that I still want to work out before that, because one of the last things I wanted to do, this is unrelated. I'm going to save this and close that. One of the things I wanted to do was get the... Why do I feel like I'm missing something? That's all there. No, okay. We're fine? Question mark? Yeah, we're fine. So one of the things I wanted to do is get this, the trick I did here with like the hint icon, this stuff. I want to get this working on the broader user interface, because right now most of what we're doing is all static images, and that's not particularly helpful. So let's see here. And we can just start with the main menu. I think it's the overview widget is what I need. Yeah, these are actually fine. It's the... because they don't show anything there. It's actually... we can start by looking at this one. Does this one actually contain? It does not. It's in the next one. Like this guy. Our back button. He's just defined by a texture. Like, I mean, it's a pair of textures. It switches between gamepad. But this operates on the assumption that you don't rebind that input. Which you... yes, it's a menu input, and that's different than like the game input, but you want to allow people to rebind things. So let's see. Event key, how did we handle that? Because we have the on back. Yeah, on pressed back, on clicked back button. Pressed back is coming from the parent blueprint, which is this guy. And what is it defining? It's just a custom event. That it also gets from the parent. Yeah. It's got to be binding that somewhere. Where did I bind that? Oh, geez. Key bindings back. That's not terribly encouraging. Alright. Yeah, events in children. We don't care about that. Action cooldowns. Select back. Yeah. Is key back pressed? Yeah, menu key bindings. Where did I set edit and set global variable values? Menu key bindings. Yeah, so see right now, all these are getting set here, which is not really where we want them to be. It's not super ideal. But let's see. We should be able. I'm just kind of reading over these. Because the way I handled stretch, the way I handled this in here is this is getting set hint text. Well, it's not getting set in here. It's getting set by its parent. But let's see. Or not, it's getting set by where? The HUD, I think, is where I set that at. Debug HUD. No, that's just the default HUD. Did I? It is probably just being set here in this guy. Yeah, control hint. It's using a blueprint interface. Oh, we got an ad break. I'm gonna go ahead and continue reading this because let's see, we got that. Yeah, we're setting. All right, post icon text, and we're getting our control hints. Hint text input. Yep, append. So it's based. I mean, we're doing it based off this guy, but I'm pretty sure I set that. Did I set it in the level or in the game mode? I might have set it in the level. Yep. Yep. That's what I did. So it's using this guy. And he was set in... Gotta think. He was set in... Okay, pad break should be over. Alright. So we set it via a blueprint interface. But that means that it's not in there. That means that we set it in the level blueprint via a blueprint interface. This one, right? That still doesn't... Where did we actually declare what that does? Because... we're pulling it from like a struct, if I remember correctly. But I want to make sure because I think because I've done this a couple different ways and then redone it, I want to make sure I reference the right struct. Going forward with this, I don't want to have to like redo a bunch of stuff because I referenced it wrong. It's not any of this stuff. Could it have been? Blueprints. Open level blueprint. It's fired off from here. It's in the player controller. I don't know why I missed that before. Yeah, this is getting referenced by the player controller. So character logic should be this guy. Yeah, get input keys. So it's handling the keys based on the input action mapping that we returned, and it should also be outputting the correct. Yeah. But one thing it's not doing in this is it's not determining gamepad versus let me see something here. It's not determining whether it's a gamepad. That's probably fine because we can do that. And make sure that we're showing the input for the correct device. So, but the thing is that's in the level. Whereas, if we're on the main menu, this is the guy we're using. So, that won't help. In that particular case. So, because right now, let's see, main menu uses, should be using this guy. In fact, levels, main menu. This should be using yeah, it uses this guy. So since it uses this guy, this guy, we know that it doesn't currently have this information. It doesn't have this. So, as it currently stands, getting the information from the controller would only work in-game. So what we need to do is add this stuff. So that means, firstly, we need to add this interface, which is our controller interface, to the main menu. But I feel like, since we're already dealing with this one that's it parents off of, which is input detection, the smarter decision is probably to just add it to the input detection. It's already handling, like that's what we already use this one for, is to detect input. So if we do it off of here, this one will natively get it anyway, or this one will natively get it anyway. But it doesn't have anything in here yet. We can jump in here. There's nothing in here. So this should all be able to be empty during this time frame. That should be fine. So this is the one we care about. It's going to need some information. But we should be able to, for the most part, copy this stuff over. It's not looking for most of this, so that's all fine. In fact, find and set input keys. In fact, it actually looks like most of this, with the exception of those two local variables, is all stuff that we'll be able to reference without any issue. So, do this. Copy. And then we should be able did I not have a input input keys variable? I guess not. Okay, well, it's just a string, so no muss, no fuss on that particular front. And branch. Okay. Cool. So that pulls all that the same way this does. I'm not sure that the rest of this is necessarily we can probably copy this, the find right input type, and the last pressed keys. That looks like stuff we can pretty easily duplicate. In fact, same is true of several of these. Actually, those are already in here. I must have copied these the other way across to make sure that the player controller had input detection in game. So then find right input type. Okay, well then we're already handling that. We just don't have this. That's fine. Now we do. Okay, so this should allow us to get what we need off of the main menu controller. Now, it's still worth noting that, let's see, project settings. I don't have, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I don't have inputs explicitly declared for like back and select, reset. So but I would argue that these are probably fine. Using these is probably fine for our for these guys. The up, down, left, right. That's probably fine there. Generally, I would probably consider treating things like the use button to be like this would be our back button. The use button would be our select button, things like that. Or perhaps if you were used to, say, the A button being your select button, it'd be jump. But I could see why, from an accessibility standpoint, you would treat at least some of these as being different. So we're actually going to call these menu select menu back menu reset. And we are going to set these as enter gamepad face button bottom. I would often consider escape to be the correct default key binding for something like that, but we can't test escape in a preview window. That closes the editor window, so we're gonna treat backspace as our or not backspace as our button, and gamepad to be face right. Oh wait, I did that wrong. Tab. You know what? This will be easier. Oh no! It duplicated things. It's not what I wanted it to do at all. Hold on. It's doing shenanigans. Menu reset. So we'll do tab. Tab seems like it might be a good one for that. They defaulted. Yeah, I was gonna say top, because then you have to reach for it. Face button top. Okay, so those are nice default options. It also confines us to singular inputs on each one, which is fine. I like to remove, let's see, whenever we do one of these, not main menu, go away. Game. Show input hint. Yes, at that point it has already decided that whether it's going to show a gamepad or keyboard input, which honestly, in my mind, is probably not the right place to do that going forward. Because that means that once it's defined, it's not going to change. Like if it's showing on screen already, it's not going to change when someone changes their controller mid command. So like we don't so much care about the keybind itself changing, but what we do care about is if they changed from a controller to a keyboard. Can I just view the blueprint part of this by chance? I don't remember if it lets you do that. I don't think it does. I think you have to load the whole thing. So yeah, so in here, get HUD, show input, get input keys. It gets it from the controller, which meant that in the controller was where we actually determined which one to show. Except we really didn't. I think we're just returning the first one. Find and set. Wait. Oh god. Yeah, this is the one. Active device. Here it is. Oh gracious. Yeah, because that's where we did this nightmare fuel. Okay. So we are determining which we're showing before we output within the controller. Find and set input keys. That means did we put that over here? Not you. You. We did not. Okay, so you, my friend, have to be brought over. It is going to be missing some things. Yeah. Key glyphs table. Input key glyphs. All right. So it should find the appropriate keys in this case. Find references. Where do we actually call this freaking thing at? In the interface. Oh, it just didn't complain. Okay, well that's fine. I can literally just do this. And then we just do that, and that, that, and that. I knew it felt like I was missing something. So that should allow this guy to detect, which means, technically speaking, the player controller should have access to that. I'm gonna say it needs... Hello, Amber. Thank you for the fart redeem. Thanks, I hate that one. I can do it back at you. Pizza Bandit. What is Pizza Bandit? You're going to have to explain that one to me. So in this case, it returns a single key. We actually need to... Guess we don't need this, technically. That was the things I hated one. Well, you know what? It worked out. I feel like that equally counts. That one feels just as appropriate. I don't really want an array here anymore, but it's 100% being used in a bunch of different places. So but this only... This also only outputs a string, too, is the thing. Based on an input name. So... I kind of feel like we'll have to leave this one alone. Fair point. It's almost on par with the retaliation fart. Shooter game where you're on a quest to open a pizzeria. You fight Enemies gather food ingredients while also having to make food do mini games. Sounds like no, I don't remember the name of it, but it wouldn't be quite the same thing. Never mind. I can't even think of it now. So, while this is helpful-ish, it doesn't handle... See, it's just gonna... Get input keys. It's going to output them. I think the only thing I could, well, and I can't really even do that here. I would have to do it in the interface. I could technically add an array that also output I don't want to do it like this, but I think I could get away with it. What I would have to do is controller interface. Where are you? There you are. I would have to add an additional output. And it would be an array of, oh, what the devil would these things be? Key structures? I guess that would just be key. F key. It'd just be these. And then I would have to come in here and create, because it's creating a string which theoretically only contains one key. But in this case, we would want all the potential mappings. Regardless of if they were gamepad or not. So... let's see. I guess then we would do the valid keys. And then unique. Because it doesn't really care. We're not having it really care whether it's a controller input or a keyboard input, or whether it's an action key versus an axis key. All we want is it to create a valid keys array that it can output. So theoretically, that means that technically, even though this is plural, under most circumstances, it should only ever output the valid string of one key. So despite how I named it, it's technically not true. But this could always output all of the potential keys that could be mapped to this. It's a little bit moronic, but it technically works. How was my trip away? Well, it was a work trip, so it's not like it was necessarily a vacation, but I mean, it was more of a vacation than regular work, I guess you would say. Did have to meet a bunch of different vendors and go to some classes, some trainings and stuff. The weather was nice, which for San Francisco, at least in my experience, isn't too big of a surprise. The weather's generally pretty good, especially compared to here. Yeah, I've been there kind of in both the spring and, late summer, early fall periods. And I would generally consider it to pretty much always be like t-shirt and shorts weather. Although it's really funny because to be out there this time, if it wasn't for the fact I had to go like do work things and I felt it was a little inappropriate to walk around in shorts, I would have probably worn shorts the whole time I was there. And yet to walk down the street, you would see people who were clearly residents, like bundled up in like fairly heavy coats as if it was frigid. There is a lot of wind. Like that's probably the only reason I ever really wear a coat or a jacket at all. And even then it's usually like a thin hoodie in San Francisco, and that's because there's just so much wind that it sometimes feels colder than it is. But it's generally good weather in my experience. The worst you get is like fog, which really just affects, how well can you sightsee. It's, whereas here, it doesn't get as hot in the Carolinas where I live as like down in Florida or out in like Texas, or you go to those further south places and it definitely gets a lot hotter. And there are certainly more southern parts of California that get a lot hotter. The comparison for it's a lot like Los Angeles is further south than San Francisco, and Los Angeles is like a 7-Eleven with dodgy air conditioning multiplied into a city. But if you go to, say, somewhere like Florida, it's always really humid, really hot. Here, it gets really hot and really humid certain times a year. If Florida was Satan's ass crack, the Carolinas would be like his armpit. In terms of it's way hotter down there, but it gets really hot and humid up here. But then I go out to like San Francisco, and I mean, it was like in the mid 60s to low 70s Fahrenheit, mind you, Fahrenheit. Um, I don't know what that is in Celsius off the top of my head. Um, but it was, t-shirt weather, t-shirt and shorts. Um, I think in the evenings it gets a lot colder. I would be more likely to wear a coat in the evenings, because I think it did get down into like the low 50s to the 40s some of the nights. But I don't go out at night in San Francisco if I can help it. I could say a lot of good things about the city, and I can say that it's cleaned up its act in recent years. I would not wander the streets alone at night, especially not in certain parts of it. It has its character, and I definitely saw at least, I'll wait until after the ad. So that the ad breaks over, I definitely saw two very interesting things this week. I'm sure in both cases we're dealing with probably homeless people that are not well off, mentally. But the first was a guy. I was taking a robo-taxi, a Waymo, so it's like a self-driving taxi that are just in like San Francisco and a couple other cities. I was taking one in for one of my classes, and I was coming up on an intersection, and as I approached the intersection, this guy was like jumping onto the hood of a car, and you could tell probably pretty much from the way he's dressed that he was probably homeless. But he was jumping onto the hood of a car for no obvious reason that I could see. It didn't look like he got hit or anything. And he jumps off the hood of the car because there were cops nearby, and the cops come over and start approaching him, and he proceeds to run over and jump on a hood of another car and like roll off of it, which is about the time that I come pulling up. It turned out somebody else in my class saw this, which is how I got more of the information about it. But so he's rolling off this second hood, and the cops start chasing him. He starts running from the cops, and it's like a Benny Hill chase scene as they run around the intersection. And he runs over. He finally just stops running from them on the side of the street and lets them arrest him. The best I can figure is he was trying to get arrested. Maybe like to have a place to sleep. Because unless he was really not well off in the head, I don't know what purpose what he was doing served. They definitely have a homeless problem out there, but like that seemed a little strange. And at least I don't often see anything like that. And then one of the evenings, I was riding in another robo-taxi, weirdly enough, back to my hotel. And this was like after almost dark. It was after dark by the time I got to my hotel, but I think it was almost dark when this happened. If not already dark. Coming up on an intersection in what I thought was a residential area. I wouldn't have pegged it as being like a rougher part of the city, but there were some homeless people about, and there was I'm gonna say couple because I don't know what their relationship was, but they were not homeless. They were walking along, and they were waiting to cross the intersection where my ride had pulled up to. And this homeless guy is by the trash can near the intersection and is shouting at the guy, and I can't tell what he's saying. but like really mad, like shouting and pointing at the guy. And it didn't seem like the guy had even acknowledged him when they walked past, which isn't terribly surprising. Again, they don't have, like, they have a homeless problem, and a lot of the homeless people there don't have access to help that they need and are not all mentally there. I've seen them shout randomly for no reason in the past, but he was like targetedly mad at this guy for some reason. And I don't know what he was saying, and it seemed like at first the guy was ignoring him, and then I guess he just had enough, and he turned around and like went at the guy. And unfortunately, this guy was like twice the size of the dude yelling at him. Like, built like a brick shit house, probably grew up on a farm kind of guy. He was an older guy. Like probably in his 60s if I had to guess, but just approached this younger homeless dude, and just haymakered him. I think in the face, I couldn't tell, and knocked him down. And I think I was gonna have to call the cops, I thought, but it looked like there was another group of people that came over and tried to break it up, and my car was already like driving off. So when you're in one of these robo taxis, you can technically stop it, but like it's not going to stop necessarily right there. So thankfully it looked like somebody was there to kind of break it up. But just, I'm going to guess that like the guy was a tourist probably, because it seems to me that anybody that has been to San Francisco a lot or is familiar with San Francisco is aware of the homeless problem, and you largely, it sounds a little heartless, you largely ignore them, especially the shouty ones, because they're not all there, and half the time they don't know who they're shouting at. They're not even aware. But yeah, so that was interesting. Still listening back to her. I assumed you were lurking while you worked. Yeah. So one of the more colorful things, but I wrote in self-driving taxi, which I shared some videos of. Let's see. Did I put those in? Yeah, I put them in the Discord. I'm gonna have to not run the audio on these because these weren't videos of that stuff happening, by the way. I have to not run the audio on these because I was definitely playing music that would get me copyright struck. So we should be good. We shouldn't have any audio on these for the stream, at least. Yeah, so this is a self-driving car, and it's just a taxi. You can call it up on an app like you would an Uber. They're generally, and from my experience, they're generally cheaper than an Uber. They are more limited in where they can go. Like, you can't get one to and from the airport, at least not right now. They did apparently get permission to start training for that, but they're not currently available there. But they're fully automated. There is like a system, like I said, you can get like a human support if you need to, and you can sit, and you can seat up to 4, so presumably you can even sit in the driver's seat as long as you don't touch the wheel or anything. But they pull right up to you, or well, they pull up to a meeting point they'll meet you at, and then if you enable Bluetooth on your phone, it'll just unlock the door when you approach, or you go in your app and you hit a button to unlock it, and then it can play music off of your Spotify or your Google Play Music. And there's a bunch of them. They're just driving around, and they're not using cameras, or at least not, they don't rely on cameras. They use like LiDAR. So they look really goofy on the outside because they have all these LiDAR sensors all over them. Let's see. I was trying to at least show, because I think I was in one that got behind another one at one point. But yeah, they go like San Francisco is also very hilly. Like it's the only place I've ever been where like you have like oftentimes like 70-degree inclines on roads. And I was really surprised, like these cars, you know, I would worry about driving it myself and like letting off the brake at the wrong time or something and rolling. But these self-driving cars, they don't seem to care. And yeah, this is just like, let's see, I don't know if it comes across in the to the stream. This is just how a lot of the roads on San Francisco are. Like, technically speaking, this is at least a 2-lane road. I think it's technically a 3-lane road. One of these is a turn lane, and there will just be cars just parked along the street everywhere, that make it just a 1-lane road because nobody's getting around there. But this is also on like a 70-degree incline in terms of a hill. Like you're on a hill that's like this, like that's, we're at a steep angle, just, and cars are just parked like this. A lot of places when they park, the hills are so steep that like there are signs telling you to park at 90 degrees. So, and then we got to see from, I've seen this view before because I've gone to this same event before. This is just a view of San Francisco from from like the tallest building, which is an office building. So you can see all the way out. So like down here is an area called Fisherman's Wharf. And that is generally where I end up staying. In fact, based on where the Ferris wheel is, and these piers, I was probably, I think I was over here somewhere is where I was staying. Somewhere in this area. Just based on the shape of everything. And then that's Alcatraz, way out there. And then the Golden Gate Bridge would be way over here to the left. You just can't see it. It's not in frame. There it is. So, and then I don't think I shared in here any pictures or any videos from the concert. I did take some videos. I shared them in some of the Discords, yeah. So then there was a Metallica concert as a part of the event, so saw Metallica perform live. So that was the thing. I'll probably share the actual excuse me, videos from the concert in there. I meant to, because I shared them on other Discords, but my phone was dying So I was trying to conserve battery the night of the event so that I could call a ride to get back to my hotel. So I just didn't post them then, and I ended up forgetting. Okay, so that gets us our valid keys, and that gets us our input keys. And then, since we should always have that, we should be able to assume should be able to assume that yeah, it's gonna need a controller reference. And honestly, let's see. It's also going to need to make sure it has the right input name, which this is technically going to be move forward backwards, not up and down. Which is fine. This one's going to be trickier. Will that make it less angry? Okay. It occurs to me that this is only going to work somewhat as it stands, because this is technically going to pull in all of this. And it's an axis key. Will this... Okay, this is going to have to be trickier. And I say that because it won't be able to simply pull those. It needs to know if we do a comparison, because we would be looking for the scale. Okay. I concede, because at this point I'm making this too difficult. So because of that, we're just going to do it like this. W S A D, and we also need an appropriate this is going to be the left thumbstick up. So we just won't treat these as an axis, because it's simpler not to in this particular case. Plus, we don't need a degree of motion for that. But that means also that this just has to pull that menu nav up. Put that there. And this will let us set this hopefully more dynamically than it currently is set. I'm not 100% confident that this will work correctly because I'm not sure if it will update as easily and like quickly as it should. Right, we have menu select, menu back, menu reset. Oh. Okay. Now, technically speaking, we still have that last input there to worry about. I don't care about it at the moment, but it is technically there. The other thing we can set that I think would be important would be our, I would want to say key string would be important in this case. But I think we'll be okay in that case. Because this is mostly checking via these. Let's see, key bindings up, find referencing. It's mostly checking to see if one of these is pressed. So I think in that case we'll be all right. What I would like to do is look at addressing how we display this. All right, now it's handled through a navigation key button, which makes sense. UMG. So I think our main buttons are gonna probably be that guy. I think everything else is largely going to be a shape button. Technically speaking, the way keyboard control, like the way controllers are currently mapped, will be a thing, but that's actually being handled through a lot of this. So I don't like this is a separate beast entirely to replace with text, but this guy should be, I think, easier to work with here. So right now it relies on an image. But personally, I think we could replace that and have it do text instead. Specifically, for now, I'm going to hide these. Stretch. My back was getting sore. We did it through this guy using a rich text block. So I would think that we could do something similar right in here. I do want it constrained to the size of that, though. Which is probably, if we want that restricted, how could you best, actually, let me compile it. It may size itself appropriately. No, it didn't. Okay. I don't really need it to auto-wrap text. That's not really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for it to size the text down. by default, it sits at a 24-point font. Whereas that sits at a 16. So would probably that's hover effect. That's a scale thing. Probably better to do it here. I do font size. I would probably set main color. Oh, you can't do that. It's a slate color structure. I could do that. And then I think that'll override too many things. Yeah. What did I... Is it input font? The heck is that font called? Prompt font, I think. I don't. Does that actually set any of that? It does adjust the size, seemingly. Although I'd prefer if this all stayed within the friggin' box. Scale box. There we go. Collapsed is probably what I want. So they don't take up space. Where's this scale box? That's probably what we want. It's got to fit Y. Now we set that to fill. And then the actual icon can be set in here. We would have it update the hint icon do like this, because we can basically just have that same dealio and bring it over here and a boopity boop. Oh, but we can't do it there. It needs to be on the event graph. And boop. Hint icon. Boop. And then that gets set when this is shown, right? Because it's control hint. So then it gets shown on here. The action. hint. Just show input hint, which is a different interface entirely. But still going to be on the controller, I believe. No? It's probably in here. Where did I do that at? Actor interaction component. Didn't I already look at this? You know what, though? I may have never actually set any of that up. Because I don't use it yet. Because I think I literally just defaulted it to true in the level. Because the level's what's actually calling this. So I think I just overrode it and told it to show by default in this particular use case. Get input keys. Yeah. Timeout. And then action jump. I just basically said that's the one to do. So that's fine. We don't necessarily need that. So we need to set a action string. In fact, we may just call it input action. We'll make it instance editable and exposed on spawn. And we'll default it to menu. Oops. We'll default it. Hello? Not you. Definitely don't want it to be multi-line. That'd be terrible. Could you? I don't know what's with it, where it won't let me scroll down unless I do that. Menu select is the default. So then what it's gonna do is put our input text there. Oh, I did this on the wrong thing. I was wondering why it didn't make any sense. There we go. We want it here. Because on the global, nope, on here, and take this guy, hit him, and we can that should, let's see. That just sets it to the string and puts it in there. So we need to make sure we get the icon here, which we would do. Let me think. We would do this guy. So we would then use this to so in this case, if I told it menu back, okay, that doesn't quite work. But it also might not work at runtime anyway. Let me try a few things here, because it might be one of those things I can only test at runtime. Because it relies on the player controller. So, if that's the case, our back button's there. our decision button isn't technically using inputs either, which we might want to eventually do. But that's something to consider here in a minute. All right, so those are there. Decision credits. Menu select. Menu back. Menu reset. That's of course assuming that this is gonna work. I kind of think it won't, or I'm worried it won't, based on the little bit of information I have available. I'd like for it to work. It'd be one thing if it just isn't, you know, something I can preview in this screen. That would be a entirely different but acceptable situation. It's also like I'm not doing it at construction. I'm doing it, I think, at runtime. So I need to double check, but I think that could be why. If I want to preview it here, I probably have to, excuse me, I probably have to do it at construction. I'm hoping, though, and part of the reason I'm going ahead and changing this across the board is I'm hoping that it's going to work. And then any changes I would make from there would be minimal, and most of the major integration would be done at that point. Plus, if it is a case of like adjusting whether I do it at runtime or whatnot, then again, if I have to do, if I already have these set up like this, then I should only need to change it within the button and not within the whole thing. So this one's not gonna have its own button just yet. That's fine. because I didn't account for any extra buttons. Okay. So let's see what this guy does. Oh, I didn't mean to kill the music. It crashed. Infinite loop. Uh, Interesting. We specifically hit a loop on here. When trying to get input keys. Interesting. Okay. All of the infinite loops are on that same one, which happens when it's keyboard and mouse. Found glyph. So is active input device. It switches to keyboard or mouse. And it runs through an infinite loop. Why does it run through an infinite loop? It should only be looping through here. Oh, wait. It loops through. Wait a minute. Completed. If found glyph is true. This is just a hunch. But I would argue I don't need to do that. Now that's not where it's doing a loop. I think I understand what the problem is. I think it has to do with I'm not breaking out of my loop properly. I should probably make this thing make more sense, if we're honest here. It is such a spaghetti mess. To be fair, these are happening in a loop. Which could be where it's breaking down. But I don't think so. And it should only be doing like a handful of those. So I think the actual issue is that when it's looping through, it gets to this point and it's stuck here. And I have a feeling what I need to get it to do is exit out of the loop using like the found glyph. I think that's what I meant to do. I set this up a while ago and I guess I didn't catch the loop testing for the jump key, which is weird. Maybe because when it's doing multiple inputs, it's hitting that loop. Not really certain on that front. Interesting. So I wonder if I can trigger it with a gamepad and have it go to the other loop instead on the log. I'm just curious to see if the log comes back different if it thinks my active input is a gamepad. And it may not get to the point that it actually detects the gamepad. And that could be part of it. I'm sitting here messing with the joystick to try and ensure it detects. But it looks like it aired out. Oop, it crashed. Assertion failed. In this case, it actually failed to do anything. A macro, engine loop. It's hard to say with a generic error like this. Window creation failed. Most likely, it was a loop, and the loop actually might have been worse with the controller, if we're being entirely honest. We are about to end up with an ad. And I think we haven't gone the full amount of time here, but I'm gonna snooze the ad because, well, I would usually go a little longer. The fact that this is gonna take a while to come back up, and this is my first stream back, my throat's already getting a little raspy. I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it. Let's see. let's get... I got our raid target here. Cause yeah, it's been a week without me streaming, and so my voice is getting raspy already. So since we had this crash and it's gonna take a while to open, I would rather go ahead and call it an evening and just plan to come back on Thursday. Be better for the wind, the vocal cords, the windpipe. So everybody have a good evening. And we'll deal with this infinite loop later.